Hey there everybody, my name is Wyeth and welcome back to Fantasy Inc. Today we are doing a series review on Delvers LLC, written by Blaise Corvin. This LitRPG was initially self-published back in 2016 and currently has about 5 books out. Let's jump into it. Delvers LLC is an interesting read. It does a great job of blending different genres. Primarily, it is a lit RPG, though it sprinkles in some romance here, some action adventure there, as well as a little sci-fi. All this blended together makes it quite a unique story. Blaise Corvin is an author who has mainly focused himself on this series and other spin-offs. Our main characters are Jason and Henry, two Earthers who are transported suddenly to a new world called Ludus. In this world, a benevolent yet slightly piffy god named Dolos oversees it. Dolos refers to Ludus as his pleasure planet, though it's not really used for that specifically. It's more of an experiment that this great powerful being, Dolos, is utilizing to conduct his work. Jason is a Caucasian man on the taller side who happens to be a little bit nerdy. He is an IT programmer, if my memory serves me correctly, who practices swordplay in his free time, and that brings in his sword practicing partner, Henry Sato, an Asian man who is ex-military, who had become an EMT in his later life. Though these two men may not be the ones you would expect to survive and thrive on an alternate planet, they don't do too bad of a job. Both of them do have a tendency to give a little lip to authority figures, Henry Sato specifically. Other than that, they are sent on a task by the god Dolos, and whether they complete it or not, we will find on out. But if they do, they will be allowed to return back to Earth. Now, we're going to move on over to pro for the series in general. The first pro is going to be the unique world building and game mechanics that Blaise Corvin put into this series. The world itself is a very interesting idea. It's similar to a lot of other fantasy worlds, but the way the culture is built out and the different species that inhabit this world is very unique. And I won't touch on it too much, but Blaise Corvin has a great way of imagining basically the ideal world for a man. That brings me to my personal con for the series, and this may or may not be shared by other people. On occasion in this series, the specific situations can become overly sexualized. Nothing too graphic, but it is definitely not a young adult fantasy series, if you know what I'm saying. So in certain times of the series, I kind of skipped ahead. It's not for me personally, but I won't knock it for anyone else, so it's just something to keep in mind. My last pro for this series is some really strong character development. I've said this before and I'll say this again. You don't want a character to become a different person completely, though it might be a complete improvement. It is unrealistic and I would say not often justified. With that said, Mr. Corvin does a marvelous job in pacing the character development. Henry and Jason are, thrown into the cook fire and they need to learn how to survive, and they are trying their best, but they are adapting very quickly. And that's more of the life or death situations. When it comes to the cultural elements, they are a little bit on the back foot, which I can definitely appreciate. Probably some other readers may not have the same mindset, but I digress. It's not just about Henry and Jason. We have many female characters in this series that are very well defined and are completely independent and have well-justified beliefs and goals. The world, as well as just the universe that Blaise Corvin has built out, is that it is very female-oriented, with them taking the positions of power while men often take the back seat. I think that's a really fantastic idea to roll with, and reminds me of the political systems in the Loreshi Society and the King's Dark Tidings series, and I love it when we get different cultural and political atmospheres in certain books that you would not see anywhere else, or at least are very uncommon, and this is one that definitely took my fancy. With all that said, we're going to go ahead and jump into the deep dive. If your interest is piqued, I hope you pick this one up. It's definitely very enjoyable, and be sure to keep reading. All right, I'm going to ask the question that I know we're all thinking. When is book 6 coming out? Because I need to know what's about to happen to Bessie Eby. In all seriousness though, I'm really appreciating the story so far. It's up to book 5 and the plot is only thickening with the dark ones, I forget the term, the evil godlike beings coming back in the universe are about to return, and Dolos has to get his work completed. When it comes down to it, in the specifics, this book series is very unique, but as a whole, at least as the overarching plot, it shares a lot of similarities and tropes with other series out there. The one that comes to mind is The Wheel of Time. We have this ancient evil that had been defeated long ago and is now rising again. The magic system as a whole, with different orbs allowing the characters to utilize the dew, or magic in this case, that's very unique and I can appreciate that, as well as our main characters have their own specific personalities. Henry is the most un-PC person that I've read in a very long time, and to be quite candid, I'm completely for it. We'll have to see where the plot is going to go in the end. I imagine that Henry, Jason, and many of the other characters in the Delvers LLC are probably going to be conscripted against this dark force in the last book or two, but first they have to unite the world of Ludus to prove to Dolos that his work has been completed, and that the orbs that he gave them are all good for mass manufacturing, I'm pretty sure. With all that said, we'll go ahead and jump into the characters. I touched on Jason and Henry enough. When it comes to the love interests of the two, I'm a big fan of Maureen and Alula. My heart lies with Maureen, how she's willing to do whatever it takes to make sure that she is not as weak as she was in book 1, and that has led her down some pretty dark avenues, but she's learning to cope with her new changes now that she's met with the Deepwater Rose. I'm fairly sure I'm remembering that correctly. Alula, being an Ariva woman who was shipped on over to this planet accidentally, has adapted fairly well. Even though she's refusing to take the power that's first handed to her, she has a drive to obtain the artifacts of her people, or just the universe as a whole. She's not letting quick power get in the way of her true desire. My two favorite characters in this series, and I don't think it's that surprising for those of you who have probably already read this, is Bessie Eby as well as Thirsty. Starting with Thirsty, it really shows a different perspective of an Earthling coming to a different world, showing the determination and survivability of the human race, which is a trope that a lot of authors and movies definitely fall into. I guess humans are very much like cockroaches. It is very hard to kill us all. When it does come down to it, the idea to make Thirsty a drag queen definitely gave an awesome voice on this world as a whole, as well as a character who definitely has struggled in the past but can overcome hardships based on their previous experiences. This is mirrored by both Jason and Henry. Jason more specifically with his struggles with his stepfather when he was growing up as a young man and having to live in a women's shelter during his formative years, as well as Henry having to deal with his experience when it came to the wars on Earth. So, big fan of how these men, or in Thirsty's case, women, have been able to take Ludus and make it their own to the best of their abilities. Finally, we'll stop on Bessie Eby. I have a lot of respect for this young man, or Mahali hero in this case, and I don't know about y'all, but I just loved his decision to almost follow in the footsteps of Maureen, but instead of chasing power that is probably left alone, he's taking a risk and he is becoming the man, the myth, the Mahali troubadour hero that he so desires to be. And just his perspectives when we cut over to him, it's so cut and dry. And we get this a lot with other characters, I will say, of how they view their fellow Delvers as being fairly ignorant in their scenes. And then Blaise Corvin will shift over to that character who is just proclaimed to be ignorant in the minds of others, and they have a very rational opinion of what they had just done. So I think it's a very accurate representation of how people act or think in their own lives, and Blaise Corvin is a master when it comes to the thought process of his characters, as well as the perception that they may give off to others. The magic system in this book is wonderful. I love the Duana orbs, the Dolos orbs, but especially the hero rings that have been given out. It appears that you need these special devices to access the dew up until Henry had his little stint where he got to talk to his own dew in book 3, I believe, and it's really being fleshed out more and more. As we get more information on the Grisius, we'll be able to understand the plight of the universe and why Dolos's work is so important. When it comes to predictions for the series, I do think something else will get in the way of them getting back to Earth. Whether they end up going, we'll have to see. I don't think a lot is waiting for them there other than Henry's mother and Jason's IT job. I imagine in book 6 we'll be seeing Beziibi reunite with the Delvers LLC team, and that they will be fighting the creation of Dolos's sister, or at least her little pet project that she has going on. And that fight may complete the work, but time will only tell. If y'all know how many books this series is expected to have, please drop that down in the comments below. All in all, I've really enjoyed this LitRPG series. Please feel free to give me your thoughts on some of my opinions stated in this video about this series as a whole. I would love to start a discussion on up. With all that said, I do appreciate all y'all's time today, and be sure to keep reading.